Today, we will be demonstrating the proper techniques for hand manual muscle testing. Anna will be the therapist, Abby will be the client, and I will be narrating. Manual muscle testing of the hand is typically not done in the gravity minimized position due to the size of the muscles. In order to follow best practice on all MMT done in this video, it will be in the gravity resisted position. Due to this change, all grading will be 3- or above. When you first meet the client, you should introduce yourself to build rapport. Then you will explain the test and ensure that the client understands. After this, you will address the client's posture by ensuring they are sitting up tall and their feet are on the floor. First, we will do digit MCP extension. The functional muscle movers are the extensor digitorum, extensor indicis, and extensor digiti minimi. The client position is seated with forearm in pronation and wrist in neutral. The arm and wrist is supported on the table with hand over the edge of the table and digits are flexed. The practitioner is seated across from the client, stabilizing the metacarpals. They will instruct the client to straighten their fingers at large joint while keeping the middle and end joints flexed in a hook position. Resistance is then applied to the dorsal aspect of the proximal phalanges in the direction of MCP flexion. Next is PIP flexion. The functional muscle mover is the flexor digitorum superficialis. The client is seated with forearm in supination and wrist in neutral, while supported on the treatment table and digits in full extension. The practitioner will be seated across from the client, stabilizing the metacarpals with the proximal phalanx of the digit being tested. This test will be done with the adjacent fingers being held in extension. They will instruct the client, bend the middle joint, keeping the end joint straight. Resistance is applied to the middle phalanx in the direction of digit PIP extension. Third will be DIP flexion. The functional muscle mover is the flexor digitorum profundus. The client should be seated with forearm in supination and wrist in neutral, while supported on the treatment table and digits in full extension. The practitioner will be seated across from the client, stabilizing the proximal and middle phalanges. They will instruct the client to bend the tip of their fingers as much as they can. Resistance will then be applied to the distal phalanx in the direction of DIP extension. Fourth is digit MCP adduction. The functional muscle movers are the palmar interossei. The client position is seated with forearm in pronation and supported on the treatment table with digits 2 through 5 in extension and abduction. Practitioner position is seated across from the client, stabilizing the wrist and the metacarpals. Instruction to the client is to bring their fingers together. And resistance is applied to the ulnar aspect of the second proximal phalanx and the radial aspect of the fourth and fifth proximal phalanges in the direction of digit MCP abduction. Last is digit MCP abduction. The functional muscle movers are the dorsal interossei and abductor digiti minimi. The client is seated with forearm in pronation and supported on the treatment table and digits 2 through 5 extended and adducted. The practitioner will be seated across from the client, stabilizing the dorsal aspect of the metacarpals. They will instruct the client to spread their fingers apart. Resistance is applied to the radial aspect of the proximal phalanx of the second digit, the radial and ulnar aspects of the proximal phalanx of the third digit, and the ulnar aspect of the proximal phalanx of the fourth and fifth digits in the direction of digit MCP adduction.